Hi there, I'm Jim with Prevelo Bikes, and today we're going to show you how to assemble the Zulu 3, 4, and 5. Alright, so you're going to want to start by just pulling the bike out of the box. And then we need to remove all of this packing material. So you can use a couple different things to do this. So I have just some wire snips, so you can use something like this or a pair of scissors. I don't recommend using a box cutter or anything like that, or any kind of knife, because when you're slicing off the packing material, you can scratch the frame. So really all you want to do is cut all the zip ties with something like scissors or cutters. And then anything that is wrapped around the frame with tape, you can just pull that off with your hand. There's really no reason to use a knife or a box cutter. All right, so let's just go ahead and dig into it and take all this packing material off. All right, so like the label says, attention. I just want to call out attention to this piece of packing material, okay? When you remove this from the wheel, and it just did it, sometimes it takes the hub end cap with it. Now, this end cap is needed for assembly, so if you just throw this away, you won't be able to properly install the front wheel, okay? So pull the end cap off of there, it's just gonna slide off, and then this just slides in place on the hub. Without this end cap, the brake is going to rub, the wheel's not going to be able to tighten properly in the fork. So if you're having those symptoms, this is the problem. Okay, so once the end cap is on there, then this wheel is ready to be installed. All right, we're ready to move on to our first step of assembly. So I like to set the bike down just like this, so it's resting on the fork legs, just standing up, and then I'm going to install the handlebar. So having the bike in this configuration makes it the easiest, and if you get the handlebar in first before you install the front wheel, that way I'll be able to flip the bike upside down and then install the wheel. It makes it easier to kind of go one step at a time. All right, so let's dive into putting the handlebar on. All right, so go ahead and grab your Prevelo multi-tool out of the parts box and select the 4mm hex key. This is the hex key that's going to fit the bolts. And then we're just going to remove the 4 bolts from the faceplate. So I like to unthread the end of it by hand just so that I can leave the 4 bolts in the faceplate. I think that makes it a little bit easier when we're going to put it back on. So set that aside. And we're just going to lift our handlebar into place. So a couple things to note here. So one, the hash marks need to stay in the front, so you should be able to see those front center. The brake levers should face forward. The rear brake and the shifter need to be on the right side of the bike, so the same side as the chain. And the cable shouldn't be twisted around or anything like that. So you should see the rear brake and shifter have a smooth path around the bike and into the frame. And the front brake should be out in front just like this, okay? So go ahead and lift your faceplate up and just finger tighten the bolts into the stem body. All right, and now we're ready to start tightening it down. But there are a couple things that I want to know. So as you tighten the stem, you're going to want to tighten it in an X pattern. So I'm going to start top left, move to the bottom right, bottom left, and then top right. So it will be an X. So just like if you're tightening the wheels down on a car. You also want to keep the gap between this faceplate and the stem body equal on the top and the bottom. So as you tighten it, you're never going to see this gap close all the way. There will always be a gap there, but you want to make sure it's even up at the top and even up at the bottom, just so that it's not smashed and you don't break anything or strip bolts or anything like that. All right, then as we tighten it, the handlebar can slide side to side and it can rotate. So we're just going to kind of get it generally centered, and then we're going to tighten the first 2 bolts, readjust, and then tighten the rest of it down. All right, so again, I'm going to start at this top left, and I'm going to drive that bolt in. All right, so once it's mostly tight, I will move down to that bottom right. Now again, I want to note and make sure that that gap at the top and the bottom is the same. Right now it's a little bit more closed at the bottom, but I can adjust that in a second. And now the handlebar, it can move, but it's not super easy to move. So this is my chance to kind of get it adjusted. So I'm going to make sure it's centered so it's not slid off to one side. Then I'm also just going to get it rotated where I want it. So to get it rotated, I want the brake levers about 45 degrees from level ground. That's where we set them and assume where you're going to put them. If you want to set anything up beyond that, it's all going to be preference, and you can move brake levers and shifters all around based on your own preference, but this is where we're going to do it for the video, okay? All right, so let's get that centered. And then again, since I over tightened the bottom a little bit, I'm going to go up and I'm just going to tighten that top left bolt again to kind of even out the gap at the top and the bottom. And I want to get these bolts pretty snug, basically as tight as they're going to go without excessive force with the wrench in this configuration, okay? And we'll go over that at the very end here, all right? So now I'm ready to move to that bottom left. I'm going to drive that bolt all the way in. All right, so that bolt's tight, and then I'm going to move up to the top right. All right, so with all 4 bolts tight, I drove all the bolts in with the wrench in this configuration. So if you move it down to an L like this, this is how we're going to torque it down. So I'm going to move back to that first bolt. So I'm going to go the 1, 2, 3, 4 like I did already, but I'm going to torque them down. So I'm going to get it just like this, and I'm going to tighten it a 1/4 turn. Okay, move to that bottom right, tighten it a 1/4 turn, bottom left. Get that in there. So 1/4 turn, and then the top right, 1/4 turn, and that's it. Handlebar is tight and installed. All right, so now we're ready to install the front wheel. So I like to flip the bike upside down just like this. It just makes it so when you put the front wheel in, gravity holds it all the way in, and it's just easy so you're not fumbling with the bike or anything like that. All right, so the first step, inside the brake caliper, there's a little tab you got to pull here. So this is just it's basically a caliper spacer. So when it's in there on a hydraulic brake, if the brake is pulled and this isn't in there, the pads will go in and they'll stay in, okay? So anytime you are working on a bike with a hydraulic brake, make sure that you don't accidentally pull the brake when there's no wheel or no pad spacer. It's a good idea to hold on to this if you transport the bike in the trunk of your car with no wheel on or something like that. So if you're transporting it and the brake gets pulled on accident, you don't end up with that problem. All right, so that's what this is for. Then get your multi-tool and grab the 6mm, and then we're going to loosen the through axle, and we're going to do it from the side with the brake on it. So this is just going to go right into the through axle. So loosen the axle all the way. And then that axle is just going to slide out. Then grab your front wheel and note the disc brake rotor. The rotor needs to slide into the brake caliper. So get it in the correct orientation. And that's just going to slide down into place. You're going to slide the through axle back through. And then I like to drive the through axle all the way in with the wrench in this configuration, just like we did with the handlebar. So I'm going to get that in, start tightening it, so righty-tighty. Drive it all the way in. And then once you get to the tight point, bring the wrench down into an L configuration, and then about a 1/4 turn is about as tight as you're really going to get this with the multi-tool, and that's plenty. So we're going to put it in this way and get about a 1/4 turn out of it. All right. And then pull the brake, and that's it. Everything's functioning as it should. Wheels installed. All right, we're ready to move on to the final step, installing the pedals. Now, pedals are right and left specific. So on the pedals, you'll notice an R and an L sticker, and that's because left pedals are opposite threaded. This is because as the bike is pedaling, you don't want the pedal to unscrew and fall off. All right, so we'll start with the right pedal. To install it, we're going to use this 6mm hex key. You can use the multi-tool, but basically pedals need to be very tight, and the multi-tool will start to bend before the pedals are tight enough. And if you don't tighten a pedal all the way, as the bike is being ridden, pedals can work their way loose and they'll fall off and damage the crank. You can lose the pedal, you can mess up a ride. So you don't want that to happen. You want to make sure that they're nice and tight. Okay. In the parts box with the 6mm, you might have also noticed this little guy. This is an adapter to go from 6 to 8. So if you chose the alloy air pedals, you need the 8mm. So you would just take this and put it on the 6mm and then tighten it up. All right. But since we're doing the stock pedals, we can just set that aside. All right. Now, these pedals are also a little unique compared to most. A lot of pedals are going to use like a regular wrench and it's going to grab on right there. But these are going to tighten from the back side with the hex key. So after we put it in, we're going to go through the crank here and tighten it down. Okay. Now, a little trick. I like to just grab it where that wrench would normally go, get it in there, and then pedal the cranks backwards. So as you do that, the pedal will start to tighten in. And then I'm just going to drive it in with the hex key. And now right pedals are righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, but since I'm driving this in from the back, it's opposite. So I know this is going to be confusing because the left pedal is opposite, but since we're in from the back, you have to turn it to the left and it will tighten it down, and you'll see it thread into the crank. All right. And then what I like to do is I'm going to change the wrench to be in the L configuration, just like we've done with everything. Find its spot. Then I have the crank at about 45 degrees, and then if I grab the wheel and push it, it will push the crank. So that's going to give me leverage to get the pedal tight, because again, pedals have to be very tight. All right. So I'm going to hold onto the wrench, I'm going to grab the wheel, and I'm going to push them against each other while I tighten it, and basically get it as tight as I can. All right. So that pedal is tight, and now I'm going to move on to the left. So again, this is going to slide in, the wrench this way. And since this pedal is opposite, when I go from this direction, it's going to be righty-tighty as I rotate this way. You can do the same thing where you just grab it by the spindle and spin the crank. And if you're doing both pedals at the same time, you can do that all at once. And just get this nice and tight. Okay, same thing, right? I'm going to get the crank arm at about 45 degrees. Get my wrench in there, and I can use the same trick where I grab onto the tire and pull that. Get it as tight as I can. And that's it. Pedals are installed. All right, you did it. The bike is fully assembled. Now, before you put your kit on the bike, I always just like to do a quick safety check. So grab the tires, make sure that they have air in them, make sure the brakes work, everything is tight, so just give it some wiggles, make sure that nothing twists around or anything like that. And then that's it. You're good to go. So enjoy riding with your little one, and thanks for choosing Prevelo. Take care.